The idea of these webinars is to reach out to international schools, international organisations, and international recruitment agencies to talk about how they are making systemic changes with regards to racial equity in their institutions. And today I have Jessica Magagna from Search Associates, which is an international recruitment agency, which I've worked on for a very long time. I use every time I move abroad to different international schools. And so, Jessica, I just want you to talk a little bit about your own journey in your life and your experience in education and how you came to be the CEO of Search Associates.
Well, I came into this line of work a little differently than what you would traditionally see. Both of my parents were educators my whole life, teachers. And so I was a student in international school settings. So we moved, I was born in Tangier, Morocco, where my father was the head of school at the American School of Tangier. That's where I was born with my two other siblings. And we moved back to the States, and he was a head of school here. My mother was a elementary teacher. Then we moved to Iran, Tehran, Iran, and I went to school there. So I've been in the education sort of world, but as a student and as a daughter of two educators. So it's always been in my blood. International teaching and just being abroad has always been, embedded in me. And my father, after he did his last headship in Jakarta International School for 7 years, he came back to the States and really felt that what he wanted to do was start Search Associates. And he was very, very passionate about finding the best teachers for international schools. That was his passion. Even as a head, he was gone all the time, traveling all the time, recruiting all the time. And so he started the company 1990. Yeah, quite a while ago. And by that time I was, in my 20s. And so, he would call all of his adult children up, and we were stuffing envelopes and, packing cars for job fairs and doing all of these things as the company, as part of the company and sort of behind the scenes. So probably I'd say when I was in my 30s, I was doing a lot of recruiting, which I really enjoyed for upper management in the retail industry. And I'd been doing that for a long time. And I volunteered for local organizations and did educational outreach programs for small children, which I also really enjoyed. And my father called me up and he said, listen, you need to come and work for Search Associates. And I said, I don't think so. I don't know if I want to work with a parent, but I missed being in that international community. I always missed it. And this was a way for me to get back in. And so I accepted the job almost 18 years ago. And and so I started, he at the very bottom, and he trained me, and I worked with him very closely for many, many, many years. And over time, I eventually just moved into, an executive role, and then eventually CEO. And so that's my journey into the world of Search Associates.
Right. I think that's about nearly the same length of time I've been with Search.
Mm. That's a long time. That's great. I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, continued. Yeah, so that's an amazing journey and really, really interesting. And your links to international education. So, you understand the system and the different types of schools and things like that. So more recently, obviously, last year I contacted Search Associates to bring up a couple of questions I had. And we started a dialogue over email. And then since then, you and Search have really sort of committed to change it. But what I'd like to know is how have you sort of put that in place from your own words? I mean, I've seen the what's been happening over the last year with search, but I just want you to sort of explain how you have committed to change in search.
Well, this really all started, back to a year ago, right? With the, after the murder of George Floyd, and, the Black Lives Matter movement was really, all around us. And, this is the topic at the time. And we sent out, and I'm sure you saw it. We sent out an email, or I think a letter, sort of a newsletter saying, we're very sorry. We just think this is awful. And in solidarity, we stand with you. And the response we got from that was overwhelming. And it wasn't a good response. It wasn't like, thank you. It was really very direct and very honest communication from many, many candidates, of our own candidates who had been with us over a long period of time. And they were very clear about their concerns about the organization and, the schools that we were working with, and accountability, and our, what are we doing with DEI? And we don't see that you're doing anything. And it was just this whirlwind, I would say. And it was, in some ways it was sort of, this was all happening and being displayed very publicly too. Everybody was sort of seeing what we were, embroiled in at the time. And so a lot of things were coming up on Facebook, and, my marketing manager is like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to answer these questions. And I said, please put my name and my email address up on the page. And so I want to talk to everybody. I'm going to have these conversations. And it really started there. That's where it started. And I had so many people contact me, and had, just listening to their stories and what they were going through, what they had gone through, what they went through with search, what they went through in the international school community, was really just shocking. I was honestly shocked that this was going on. I think that, I guess I would have to say, burying my head, not understanding that this was really happening. And it was through all of those kinds of conversations that they really taught me that, where search had failed, what we needed to do. And it was really at that moment I said, we have to change. It just has to happen. And that started our journey. And at the time, I the first thing was, well, where do we start, right? I think that's probably everybody's question, is where do we start? And we started with getting expert help to come in and help us. And that's what we've been doing this last year, is just really devoted and really, really committed to looking internally and seeing what we can do better as an organization. And that's been our journey for this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that seems to be the right choice for a lot of big organizations, a lot of big international schools that I've connected with and spoken to, and who are putting things out there as well. And ECIS, ISS, and organizations like that are doing the same thing, looking in first to see where they can sort of go from there, making those connections. Talking about looking inwards, how have you actively involved those you work with, so your associates, in the journey?
The wonderful thing about our organization is that although we have a wide reach, and to those looking, in, or those from the outside looking at us, they think that we're this just huge kind of organization with all of these people. But the truth of it is that we're actually quite small in terms of actual people working within search. So we are all very close. We closely communicate all the time. We're talking to each other all the time. And I just got everybody together, the power of Zoom, right? Got everybody together. And, we just started having started having the conversations ourselves, right? Internally first. I was sharing with them the stories that I had heard. I was sharing emails with them. I mean, they were also seeing things publicly as well. And we just really started having these conversations about our how we could do better, and where have we been complacent, and where have we caused harm. I think it's very difficult for anyone to admit or say out loud that we have, whether it clearly not intentional, right? But the first place you have to start is we have caused harm. And that was hard to get people to swallow, because nobody wants to take on that kind of responsibility or admit something like that. And I get it. It was very hard for me to get that from here outward, right? But I think, as I was saying earlier, that transparency and taking responsibility is key in this work. It really is. And so we had lots of conversations. We had hired people to come in and help us work through this. And everybody was on board. There was no having to pull anybody in or say, hey, convince them that this was the right direction and this is what we needed to be doing. I mean, everybody was very committed right from the beginning.
Yeah, I suppose that's what you'd expect, really, because they want to. You're going to feel accountable for the actions that have happened over the years, and so to take on that responsibility is really important so that they can move forward.
But you have to understand what that responsibility is, right? And it was, I think the struggle was, and I have these when I have conversations with people, I'll hear the word, well, I'm colorblind, right? I treat everybody the same. And I had to understand how that is not helpful, right? And it was those kinds of conversations that we were having internally, and I would hear, but we treat everybody, we don't discriminate, and no, we don't. But we treat everybody the same. We screen everybody the same. Yes, we do. However, right? However, I'm colorblind is then dismissing that person for who they are and the struggles that they have, right? Because not everybody's the same. And some people's struggles are far greater than others. And so what have we done about that? How have we changed the way in which we're doing anything? What have we done? Yeah. So those were the kinds of, that's where it started. And we just kept growing from there. The conversations kept kind of going up and up from there and more forward.
As you've had these conversations, you've had more conversations and so forth with your team and the associates.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Yep.
I want to sort of move on. So we're talking about growing and so forth. And I know you've been doing work with teachers and listening to them. And so I want to ask the question, how have you actively involved the wider community?
So the very first thing we did within, I'd say, a few weeks of our sending out the letter and all of the conversations that we had with candidates, very spontaneously, right, is we set up listening circles. And so we had 6 of them. We talked to, I think there was a total of over 250 candidates that signed into various different group sessions along the way. And I have to say, I was very nervous about these because, I wasn't sure how they were going to go. I was present on all 6 of them. We had our DEI consultants facilitating the meetings, which really helped. And what I realized is that in all of the 6 sessions, no one on the group was expecting me to answer anything or speak to anything. They wanted a place to be heard, in a safe place where they can say whatever they needed to say. And that was really remarkable. And to hear the stories so personally from people over that, it was, I think we did 6 sessions over a 3 to 4 week period, was invaluable. I mean, we got more information and ideas and recommendations in those 4 weeks than we have in the last year. And so we started with that. That's where we started. And that's how we involved, all of our candidates in the conversation. And I'm very thankful for all of those people who took the time to really be a part of that.
Yeah, and actively involving, your clients in a way, I suppose, that the candidates. I think that's a really important step. I remember being part of one of those conversations, and it was enlightening to hear other people's stories, frustrations, and so forth. But just to have that space for people to, speak, but also for you to gather that information and data must have been invaluable.
It really was. And the other thing I noticed as I was, in each of these sessions was how listening to each other was helping each other, right? I mean, so many candidates were like, yes, that makes perfect sense to me. Oh, I understand that. Oh, that's a great way of putting it. And there was so much of that happening throughout the, I think it was about a 90-minute, maybe 2 hours, I'm not sure, session. It was really warming to see that, that at least they were also kind of getting that from each other during these sessions. So not only did we create a safe place for people to share their stories very honestly about us as an organization, which was not always easy to hear. And I think that's the other part, is that everyone has to be able to hear the criticism or constructive criticism. People have to be able to hear that. And and I think that's going to be difficult for some. I think it'll be easier for others, but you have to be able to hear it. And it is not easy at all. But it's necessary. It's necessary. You can't grow and you can't move forward until you know where the issues are and where the problems lie.
Yeah, it's very difficult to hear that criticism, especially when maybe you think you've been doing something so well for such a long time without maybe sometimes sort of realizing that. And also, it's difficult for others to sort of step up and say things because they don't want to sort of feel criticized or put in a hard place, because it will lead on to the, where they're going themselves and their own journeys as teachers.
Well, I think the other thing that was a really eye opener for me, and like you said, it was a shock, when we sent that letter out and all of this feedback started coming in. I was shocked because I thought, hey, we're doing a good job, and we don't discriminate, and we care about all of our candidates. And I think that was the hardest part. And I sort of personally went into this, I don't know, I don't want to say depression because that's a serious thing, but I really had to really think through all of this, right? And think through my own thoughts and my own perceptions and about all of it, right? And I remember thinking to myself, and it was heartbreaking to hear that this was happening in a community in which I love so much, the international school community. And I was thinking to myself, but how can this be? I mean, when I was a student, I was a minority, right? Amongst the class. And I thought, but it's so diverse. But as I was thinking and thinking, I started moving my memory to my teachers who were all white.
Mm.
And it was like a light bulb just exploded in my, my head. I'm like, my goodness, I was looking at my peers around me who were very diverse, but I just never paid attention to who was teaching me, right? And it was such a, like I said, a light bulb just went off in my head, and I had to go through a sense of mourning, a sense of sort of sadness, and say, this is happening, this is real, and it's been this way for a long time. It's time to look it directly head on and do what you can as an organization to help.
Absolutely. And I think everybody goes through those moments of realization when there's something so big and important. And that must have sort of felt for you a really important stage in your development, as an organization.
Mhm. And as a person, right? Just as a human being, right? So there's sort of two things happening at the same time. I mean, there's this personal work being done with all of us on an individual level, right? And then I'm also doing this as a CEO of an organization. So there are these kind of two things happening simultaneously at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to ask. I know you have created some goals for Search Associates, and you posted those recently, and they were quite detailed. How did you create those goals? Was it with a small group of people, maybe with your consultant, or did you actively involve a larger group of people to, maybe the associates, to come up with these goals?
It was actually done by the executive team in conjunction with our DEI consultants. However, we were also communicating to all of senior associates along the way, right? As we got so far, we'd say, here's where we are, here's where we are in our thinking. This is what we're thinking about, and these are the plans that we've come up with. And so as we kind of moved through that process, we kept all these senior associates involved in that way. But it was a smaller group. And really what we did was we just took all of the information that we had, right? So we did, we had our listening circles, and we captured all of that information confidentially, of course. We captured all of that information. We had a very intense organizational audit done by our diversity consultants, and that took period of time. We took all that feedback. We had all of our senior associates. We all did an IDI survey to see, where we all were collectively as an organization. We took all that information, and so we just laid that all out. And that was our beginning. That was our framework, right, for what we wanted to do. And we just pulled out things that we could. I think what was important for me is that I did not want to put out anything that I did not absolutely know we could accomplish, right? The worst thing to do is, and you kind of see people, oh, we're going to do this and this and this, and there's a lot of words, but there's no action behind it. And so for me, it was, I'm not going to put anything on paper unless we know we can accomplish it. And then this is a priority. So we have a much longer list of things that we want to accomplish, but in the strategic plan we just sent out, we condensed it to what we knew we could do with the time, the resources that we have, and that's what went out, right? So that's how we crafted that, and that's sort of the way in which that was developed.
And so you've had consultants in. Did you feel having a consultant in was really important, or did you feel that maybe you had enough experience in your organization that you could start a conversation before you had a consultant, or did you really feel you needed to bring them in straight away?
I brought them in straight away. I mean, immediately. Before I even, discussed it with the senior associates as a whole. And because I brought them in at the time when I was dealing with all of this, all of the feedback from the letter that we sent out. And I knew that I was not skilled enough to be having these conversations. I was great at listening and saying, I appreciate you coming to me, but I knew that I needed help just, as a CEO of a company who was engaging in all these conversations. I needed help. And we as an organization needed help. So we brought them in straight away. And it was the best decision, but absolutely. First of all, they're fantastic. But they were also really great at, again, sort of understanding that everybody is not at the same place at the same time in their journey, right? And so they were very, very adept at being able to talk to everyone, no matter where they were, right? No matter where they were in this work. And they were just a huge support all along, and we worked very, very closely with them. And they really helped us get from there, and a year later to where we were able to articulate and create a strategic plan, right? That was well thought out, that was, data driven, and that we could accomplish.
And will you continue working with these consultants when thinking about reviewing and so forth?
Yes, we will. There are certain things in the strategic plan that that we can do ourselves. Now we can do ourselves, right? But there are some pieces of it that I know that we'll still need some guidance. Maybe some support, some things that we want to change in our applications, or some of the procedures, some of the communications that we want to revamp. We'll need some help in that way. So I think there's we're split, like 50% we can do on our own, because some of them are very internal. A lot of them are very internally based. But we still will be using them and working with them for probably a long time. I mean, this is not something that you just do and it's over, right? This is ongoing. This is ongoing.
About sustainable, really, isn't it, at this point?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
About being sustainable and making it, that sustainability achievable over a long period of time.
Yes, and it's also about building all of these policies and procedures into the organization, right? So that it's now just part of the culture. It's not something you have to think about anymore. It's part of everything that you do, all of what you do. And so that's my goal. My goal is to make it so that this is just part of Search Associates, right? In every aspect of the organization, down to email sent to a candidate, right? To dealing with a school head or new schools applying and everything in between. That's what I want. And that's time, that's to change all that around. So this isn't just work that someone can say, well, I'm working on it now, and okay, we've done this, and we've done what we can. This is it's a lifelong journey, right?
Ongoing, absolutely. So Jessica, thank you. We have so much more to talk about. I know we were talking off screen here about a few other things, and it's been amazing to connect with you over the last year and talk with you today. Thank you. I hope we can connect again in the future and discuss where Search has grown.
I would love to have you connect again. This is very enjoyable, and like I said off camera, it's going to take all of us together, right, collectively, to really affect change, and it's doable, and I can see it happening in little bits and pieces, and it is rewarding. So I appreciate you reaching out to me and allowing me to be a part of the conversation, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.